Good evening, everyone. My name is Bonita, and I am coming to you here from what we call Perth, Ontario, which is unceded Anishinaabe Algonquin territory. And I just want to start by acknowledging the grandmothers and the grandfathers and the caretakers of this land, all of the water walkers and the protectors that have come before me and that are still here now and that will come after me, just in to really honor my teachers. And also because especially I think there are so many reasons to do land acknowledgements, and especially given our topic today, why be unlawful, just this idea of unlawning the land where we live. To me, this is so much about like the root of this issue, the root behind why we have lawns and why we maintain lawns is so much, there's so much that's woven into the threads of colonialism and capitalism. And so just starting from this place of acknowledging where we are and where we came from, and the communities of life and the original communities of people who know these places where we live, I think this is the starting point for all of us. And so I invite us to start from that place, just to really be mindful of where we are. So again, my name is Bonita, and I am the board coordinator for Permaculture Association of the Northeast. And PAN as an organization is based in Western Massachusetts. So that is traditionally Mi'kmaq, Wampanoag, and Pocumtuck land. And I just want to share with you PAN's mission. So as an organization, we are here to increase the resilience of the Northeast region by strengthening the regional permaculture network and increasing access to relevant education and resources. And so I just want to thank all of you for being here this evening. We're really, really excited about our new Unlawnful campaign, and really excited to get the community involved. And I just want to open this space with and then the intention of creating a safe, respectful, and mutually supportive environment where we can all learn together, where we can be thoughtful together, and where we can all be listening to one another. And I just want to show you very quickly, we developed, this is let's see, these guidelines we developed for one of our previous webinars, and I like them so much that I just want to share these with you very, very briefly right now, just to really encourage us to be mindful in our discussions, in our sharing this evening. So this was based on the RESPECT acronym came from the Regional Conservation Partnership. And I really love this. So R for taking responsibility, E to use empathetic listening, S being sensitive to differences, P pondering what you hear and feel before you speak, E examining our assumptions, C keeping confidentiality, and T to trust that others are here also with positive intent. So before we get into our first little mini sharing exercise, just to help orient us, I also want to point you to a community notes document. So I'm going to put this into the chat. And throughout our evening, as you're listening, as you're reflecting, please, we invite you to also put some of your thoughts and reflections into this notes document. So we have this as a resource to share with community members later on as well. And with that, I want to pass the mic over to Dele to share with us about our new Unlawnful campaign.
All right. Well, peace and blessings, everyone. I am Rev Dele. I'm facilitating director for PAN, and I'm going to actually do this, give my remarks in a thread that kind of weaves throughout the whole evening. I'm going to say a little bit now. I'm going to say a little bit in the middle of the session, and then I'm going to say a little bit more at the end. Now, why would she do that? I just want to hear a whole bunch of stuff at the beginning. Well, because remember, as permaculturists, we take slow, small steps. Why do we take slow, small steps? Because when we're working with Earth, it's a call and response conversation. It's a call and response dance. And, if you go out on the dance floor and you're the only one moving, you're probably going to be dancing by yourself, right? If we're doing a hand dance, don't you have a partner and don't you have to feel how they respond to you and back? This is what we have to do. I believe this is what we have to do to reestablish an authentic relationship with her. We have to dance with her. Okay? And that means that we have to listen, and we have to learn how to listen differently. We have to learn how to see and to see differently. When we see differently, when we can hear differently, we will feel differently. Okay. And I think that's really the crux of why we're having all of the issues that we're having in the world today, is that somewhere in our hearts, there are some cold spots. And I think that by unlawning our lawns, that's one cold spot that we can take out. And we can take it out as a community. And it can be a joyful activity. I really feel like the resilience is only resilient if we're happy about it, okay? Because fun is sustainable, right? No one's going to, I think, protest that. So I think those are a lot of the underlying reasons why I think we need to be unlawful. It's, as she said, it's one of the I think it's one of the most singular acts that any one of us can make personally and communally that will make a worldwide difference, because we're not dependent on only human actions. I'm going to give you an example. I had a piece of property once that I was working with, and I started putting ground cover around a telephone pole. Well, next thing I knew, Mother Nature threw in a bush. And then a few months later, Mother Nature put a vine. And Mother Nature rebuilt the 7 layers when she recognized that I was trying to realign myself with her. Okay? Our lawns can be living, breathing exercises in that way, or living, breathing, I don't know what the word is, but it is a being. It can be a being, and we can have that exchange as we go back and forth. And I think by having that exchange so close to your house, something you have to look at every day, this is how we change our hearts and our minds. Okay, this is why we need to be unlawful. We have lots of technical experience, right? We have lots of expertise about how to do things differently. But for some reason, we just don't want to. And I think, there's something we have to do collectively, not only as people, but as a nation. There's something we have to do collectively to begin to want to. And sometimes to begin to want to requires help. And so we're putting this campaign together so that even though it's your personal lawn, it's not something that you're expected to do by yourself. We're hoping that you will find at least 2 neighbors who will work with you on your lawn, and then you will work on their lawn. So we recreate that barn raising ethic, okay, of my issues being your issues, and we're solving them together. I think that as a permaculture organization, we're talking about permanent culture. We're talking about not only earth culture, but social culture. And I believe that the human soul is a mirror image of earth, is a mirror image of nature. And so that as we work together to restore earth, we begin to restore one another. I think that our social climates and our weather climates work together. And so if we can together remove something that is smothering earth, which our lawns are, we're going to go into lots of detail later on today, But if we can work together to help Mother Earth to breathe, and if we can do that with our neighbors, so that we no longer look at them as the other, but begin to look at our neighbors as part of us, then we're going to have a new social dynamic. And we may not have the dynamic of other people not being able to breathe, whether it's the asthma that is in African American neighborhoods, whether it's people being abused by our law enforcement officers, whatever that issue is about breathing, I think it's pretty fishy that we're having that issue throughout all segments of society. And so if we can start with our lawns, if we can start with something simple, that there's no, ostensibly, there's no law against it. I think that's a way for us to bring in our social climates, our weather climate, all in one fell swoop. Just to give you one statistic, there's 60 million acres of lawn in the United States. It is the largest crop that we have. It is the only crop that all of us participate in growing together. That's how we have a blanket of lawn across the country. And it's a crop that does not feed anyone. It does not bring resources to anyone. It drains our resources. It drains our time. And yet we seem to be stuck to it for I'll just say the last 200 years. Because we're going to have some information later on to let you know that we weren't always like this. Okay. But I think this is why, it's 60 million acres. If we change even half of that, if we change 30 million acres, if we even change 10 million acres, that's an enormous impact on the global climate. It's an enormous impact on our neighborhoods. Our neighborhoods will be places of greater beauty. They will be places where there's better mental health, better emotional health, and it'll be places that we can, be more joyful in. And so that's kind of, these are very simple things, but I think these are important things. It's the one most single act that we all can do to change our weather climate and our social climate all at the same time. So that's why I think we should be on the lawn. But this really isn't about me and what I think. And I want to hear, or I think we would all be inspired if we all thought about, why do we want to be unlawful? There must be something inside of you that makes you want to be unlawful, or you wouldn't be here, right? Come on, I think that's true. So we're going to do a little exercise together, but I want to it's going to be very participatory. So the first thing I want you guys to do is I want everyone to find on their computer how to raise your hand. And I want everyone to raise their hand. Can everyone raise their hand? It's under reactions. A plus. There we go. All right. And now can you lower your hand? Joe? Ooh, all righty. Okay, Melanie. Okay. All right. She knows how to raise and lower her hand, I'm sure. Okay, so that's one thing we're going to ask you to do as we go through this exercise. Our campaign, our theme this year is uprooting and unearthing. And so what we want to do to help each one of us really get to the root of why we want to be unlawful, we're going to do the 5 whys exercise. So what I want you to do is try to get something to write on. You're going to need something, paper and pencil, or a tablet, or something. Does everyone have something to write on? Raise your hand if you do. All right, cool. Okay, you can lower your hand. All right, so I want everyone, we're not gonna take a lot of time. I'm gonna ask you 5 questions. And when you get to the end of answering the question, that's why I want you to raise your hand so we won't waste a lot of time and we can go right into the next question. So write on your piece of paper, why do you, and it's helpful, just one sentence. Why do you want to be unlawful? One sentence. And when you're finished, raise your hand. One sentence. And when you finish, just raise your hand. I see. Raise your hand. Raise your hand. Just 2 more people. Yay! All right. Okay. Now, after you want you to look at that sentence that you've just written, and I want you to ask yourself, your next question is, why is that important to you? Look at what you just wrote, and this will be number 2. Why is that first sentence important to you? Now write that down. Okay, you have your hand raised. Okay, very quickly, lower your hands. Okay, now I want you to look at the second thing that you wrote. And I want you to make your third answer be, why is that second statement important to you? So the third answer is, why is number 2 important to you? And when you're finished, raise your hand. Okay, lower them. All right, we're going to do number 4 a little differently. First, I want all of us to take a minute to say, we're going to just take turns to say out loud, what did we write for number 3? What was our third statement? What was our third why? We would like for you to type your why into the chat. Remember, this is a campaign. We want to inspire other people. If you feel inspired by something that you've said, I'll bet someone else might be inspired too. You don't have to, it doesn't have to have your name on it per se, but just the idea. Remember that ideas flow freely from lots of places. And I think when we're able to share them freely, we all feel better. So
Were we supposed to write the last thing that we come up with, or the first answer to your question? Why be unlawful?
the last,
The last one. Oh, okay.
but you know, if you like all your answers, you can put them all in there. Yes. The idea with the exercise is to really get to the root of why you want to do anything. There's usually layers of why you want to do something. And if you ask yourself that same question over and over and over again, you're going to unearth a lot of different reasons why. And sometimes when you get to the end of the exercise, you start repeating. And I feel like that's when you've completed your circle. And so repeating is not a bad thing. Repeating means that you have really reached rock bottom clarity. All right, so how did you all feel about doing that exercise? Was it frustrating, or, you know, how did you feel while you were doing this? Shy?
Connected to my heart.
Felt connected to your heart? Anyone else that want to share how they might be feeling when they were doing it?
Excited.
Excited?
Mhm.
Oh. So that means you're looking forward to something else, huh?
Yeah.
I was a little frustrated to have to be succinct, but I've shared this 3 times this week because as someone who's worked for 35 years, I've testified, I've attended hearings, court cases, pesticides, fracking, GMOs, and where have we gotten? And with this, we're solutionaries. It's not a Band-Aid where there's always more negative. We're empowering others and leaving a legacy and creating the world we want to live in. And truthfully, for what I've done, I don't think there's anything more important right now than this. I'm very grateful for all of you to be able, it's very emotional for me right now. I'm in a big transition stage after the passing of my mom and refocusing how I used to spend my time and what matters now. And I'm grateful for this organization and for all of you for showing up. And I was a little uncomfortable at first, but I'm very grateful. Thank you.
Anyone else want to share how they were feeling through the process?
I think that I really enjoy the way that doing this activity made me feel connected to the people who are in this webinar here, and like we were all putting our heads together towards the same goal or project. Like we were all oriented towards the same vision, and we were using each of our experiences and our own unique perspectives to try to come up with real solutions and answers to these questions that are so pressing.
Anyone else? And I invite you all to scroll through the chat and, you know, read what people have written.
I'd like to share with every contribution. I felt like we were kind of building something together, and we were kind of it felt really cohesive to me, which when things like that line up for me, I feel like I'm exactly where I need to be at the moment. So in which case I would echo whoever said that they felt like their heart was full and happy and healthy, because that's really what it's about for me.
We got to put that on a bumper sticker. Okay.
I felt kind of the opposite as
Okay.
Steph and Jack with the cohesiveness. I felt kind of the opposite in the way that I felt like it wasn't completely cohesive. And coming from a day of doing a lot of policy analysis and logic stuff for my job, to kind of think outside the box and open the mind to possibilities. I came at it at a very like logical, pragmatic way of we need this to have this to have this, and to hear more flow and connection, and yeah, just more beautiful in a certain way answers from other people was.
Well, what I like about seeing all of these different answers together is that it kind of it gives you that a full spectrum, from the inner, spiritual, heart-centered things, all the way out to social reasons, to political reasons, and it's all connected. All right. So the food is a human right. That is a political active or a political principle. And yet that political principle could be connected to all of these other beautiful thoughts. Okay? I really believe that justice begins as inner balance, and then it spreads out through our social world and our political world. And I believe that when people are not balanced and happy on the inside, they're not able to exact justice on the outside. See, that's just my belief system. So I think that having, the pragmatic and along with the philosophical means that we have a very complete whole. And one doesn't have to be better than the other. There's a proverb that says, I am because we are, and we are, therefore I am. Which means that you can't be whole without everybody else around you. And so that's why we gather in these rooms, because I can't have everything I need without you. And conversely, again, my belief, I don't think you can have everything without me. And I think that's, we need each other to balance all the different ways that we move through our lives through the course of the day or week. So I think that's the value doing this kind of activity. And just think, if you hadn't been in those kinds of meetings, another day, another set of reasons, right? But this isn't stuck in time. This is just a little snapshot, and tomorrow it'll be different. But I think, this is something that I think when it becomes personal, then it's easier to share with other people. And that's what this campaign is about. It's about not just these people in this particular Zoom room, but it's how many people can you impact outside of this Zoom room? Can you really get your next door neighbors to be a part of this with you? And would any statement that you see on this board here, would any of those statements make your neighbors feel better about participating with you? Maybe, maybe not. But this is our best shot. This is what we can do for today, and I just offer that everything that we do is not meant for this time. It's meant to be used outside of this room. And that's why we're giving ourselves a whole year, because we want to have that conversation in the Zoom room, in the neighborhood, in the Zoom room, out in the streets, back and forth. And we need time to allow that to happen so that we can inspire each other with, look at what I did in my, 2 square feet, because that's what some people have. And I want to be just as excited about their 2 square feet as someone is about their 20 acres or their 200 acres or, or their, 220, what's in between all of that, 200 square feet. but I think that's the whole goal, is that this is not just an educational activity where we're going to sit and someone's going to pour in a lot of information. This is an educational activity where we're going to bring it out. Okay, we're going to bring out the wisdom that's inside. We're going to match it with all of the techniques and expertise that's already running around out there. And we're going to connect those inner good feelings with outside actions. And we're going to document that so that we all can see we can make a difference. And we have to make a difference. You know, I think we have to, and that's really the bottom. We have to make a difference. You know, it is too hot outside, and lawns is one of the reasons why. I can show you many pictures of in 2012 when there was a drought, another time when the airports were melting and all of those things. I can show you permaculture field after field after field that was green, cornfields that were green right next to cornfields that had died. So this is a truth. This happens it happens not only, it hasn't happened in 2 generations or in 5 generations. It happens in 1 season. Okay, so this is a solution that happens before your very eyes. And you don't have to believe me. There's lots of picture proof. But if we can, you know, act on that fact that within 1 season, if everyone changed their lawn into a functioning ecosystem, there would be a tremendous impact. We all know that in 2 months of sitting down, COVID made us all sit down. We all know what happened to the environment. She cleaned up, right? She came out from under the stress that we were putting her under. So to me, that's in our lifetime. That's in 2 months. Just think if we spent a whole season, another 3 to 4 months, working with each other all across the country to restore natural rhythms, to restore natural design, to restore nature. That would restore abundance in all of our lives, in, you know, food, emotions, mentally, socially, because we would no longer be afraid of the people who live next door to us, right? Because we're going to need them to help take care of this lawn. They've got a turn too, right? I'm going to take a turn taking care of their lawn. They're going to take a turn taking care of mine. Okay, so I think that's, you know, that's why we're doing what we're doing. And I just want to keep reiterating, this is not just for tonight, this is for the next stage. And so and I will stop running my mouth and give it to Bonita.
Thanks, Deli, and thank you everyone for participating in that really beautiful exercise. Deli, I just wanted to check in with you because I wanted to give lots of space for that exercise. So this middle section, we're going to have to change up the format because we only have like maybe just a little bit more than 15 minutes. So we're not going to be able to do it the way that we had initially imagined or envisioned. So I'm wondering so I think we have two options. One is we could just stay all as a group and do it similarly to how you've been doing it. And I can just lead people through the reflection process and then invite people to share in the chat box, and maybe 1 or 2 people can share verbally. Or if we go into breakouts, we're not going to have time for a big report back at the end. So do you have a strong preference, Deli?
No, no, I'm going to leave it in your capable hands.
Let's do the breakout.
Yeah,
I mean, we've got
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We could do just 2 breakout rooms.
I'm going to choose the number of rooms just because I know the number of
Oh, that's right. You've got
questions or kind of sections. And so if we only do 2 breakout rooms, I think a bunch of people are not going to have time to talk because there are the 4 layers of questions. Okay, so maybe while I explain this, Steph, can you help set up the breakout rooms, please? And can you please set them up in pairs. Are we? I think we're a reasonable number to be in pairs.
Done.
Check you out. Okay. And so so being in pairs, we are going to go through, there are 4 layers of questions that I'm going to be sharing with you and invite you to explore with your partner. And you'll have a couple of minutes for each section. So just share whatever comes to you first. And so the first question, and so if you're looking for, I'll share the question right now in the chat. The question is also in the shared community document, and then we can also send it out on the broadcast when you get into your pairs. But the first question to explore with your partner is, how is the living world sacred to you? How might your lawn, garden become more sacred or provide more sacred nourishment? And how does the sacred support you? So we're going to send you into your rooms now, and you'll have a couple minutes for that. And then we'll send a reminder of the second, we'll send a prompt for the second question to discuss with your partner. Does anybody have any questions at the moment? Okay. Here's the first question, and we'll send it out in the broadcast. You'll have a couple of minutes. Steph, will you send us to our rooms? Or send us to our rooms, please. And thank you.
Awesome. So there was an individual that came in for a moment. Did you see Micah? I think we might have. Okay.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Steph and I were just remarking on how every group stayed to the very, very last second in their pairs. So just imagining that folks had really juicy conversations. So I would, just because we're a bit short on time and I want to leave lots of time and space for Lindsay's presentation and then some kind of closing, wrapping up thoughts, I would love to just invite 2 groups to share highlights. So would there be 2 groups, 2 people, if you could just raise your hand, please? Just if you want to share a highlight from your sharing, from your discussion, that would be really lovely. Joe, yeah, thank you. And other folks, if you have other highlights and you don't feel compelled
Maybe
to
we
speak,
could just do one. Maybe we could just do 1 or 2 per group. And
we
everybody.
don't have time, Deli.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's the time thing again. We've got, yeah.
Lindsay and I agreed that we're not separate from other things. We're all like beings, being in our own ways, and to control something and to like force something to be a certain way is not a very sacred feeling thing.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate that. Would someone from another pair like to share? And I also want to invite everyone to share a highlight in the chat box as well, too. So if I see Anne's hand, Anne, I'd love to hear from you.
Well, I really liked what Jack said about the lawn enforces this idea of like separate, that we're all individuals with our separate disconnected spaces. And when we unlawn and rewild, it's a way of having solidarity with our neighbors and recognizing that we are all connected to our fellow humans as well as the rest of the beings.
Thank you, Anne. So just seeing some messages coming in on the chat box. So grateful to dig deeper in myself on the reasons why. Thanks, Tilly. Other highlights from other groups? I guess there's just one other group that hasn't shared. Would anyone from that pair like to type something in?
Yeah, go. Unmute. Unmute, Malini.
Oh, okay. Lainey, do you want to type in the chat box instead? Or do you want to leave it to Lori
Okay,
to
can
share?
you hear me now?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, I am dialing in from the phone, but Lori just asked that I share a little bit about my work at Boston Children's Museum. And in addition to, I'm community engagement director at Boston Children's Museum, where we have a new rooftop garden. And so we are inviting children groups to come in and learn more about our ecosystem and our food system, urban agriculture, and just it's about us being connected, right? Like that's what we're talking about. We're not separate. And that what we're doing is inviting them to come in and taking what they learn and bringing it back to their school and community gardens. And if they don't have school and community gardens, connecting them with resources that can get those for them. But really wanting to spread this word. Lori and I talked about just finding people who, are kind of aligned in what we are doing and maybe fighting less and really kind of building a movement and finding kindred spirits and building from there.
Beautiful. Thanks for sharing that, Lainey. And it's so good to see you too.
Good to see you all.
Thanks for being with us. So I want to pass the mic over to Lindsay, who has prepared a presentation for us. So thank you everyone for participating and just being here with your minds and hearts. And you good there, Lindsay? All right.
Yes. Can everyone see my screen? Maybe after it loads?
Yes.
Yes?
Mhm.
Thank you so much, Benita. So I've been doing a fair bit of research on lawns and what it means to be unlawnful, and kind of more the facts and evidence and figures to support some of the discussions we've been having. You'll find there's a lot of interweaving themes and a lot of familiar concepts that came up before in some of the research that I had done. So looking at the history of lawns and what lawns are. So in the 1800s, it started in Europe, of course it did, the root of colonization. And at first, these were big swaths of land which were grazed by livestock. And so they could get to the ground to create really short grass. And having a big swath of land above that of your livestock needs was seen as a symbol of status. It was saying that I have extra land to waste, where they would trim it down with, once the livestock was out of the range, then they would use slave laborers or very low-wage workers to cut the grass with a scythe. And so then after that, in the 1860s, there was the invention of the first mechanical mower, which was actually a carpet trimmer and a carpet cleaner, which is really fascinating. And so that was the first iteration of the lawnmower, easier to use than livestock management, and it would replace the slave laborers. And then in the 1920s, doing a little jump there, there became an obsession with golf courses as a symbol of status and wealth, and again, that capacity to be able to waste. And then in the 1950s, this was post World War II. So a bunch of veterans were coming back from the war in North America. And so they were given some money to be able to afford houses. And so this was the dawn of suburbia. And there was a small town where Abraham Levitt became the developer and the organizer of lawn care management, front yard management. And So Abe's standard was that in this community, in the deed of the development, you had to mow your lawn once a week. And if you failed to mow your lawn once a week, they would come and do it for you and charge you a bill, and you'd be faced with social pressures to mow your lawn. And so that was the first iteration of penalties for failing to uphold the standard of lawn management. And so in the future, then Abe's standard became America's standard. So that was the status quo that was embedded and embodied, and that was the seed for the modern lawns that we have today. And because we're talking about uncolonizing lawns, I love this quote by Canadian history professor John Douglas Belshaw. A backyard with a big lawn is like a classroom for colonialism and environmental hostility. So lawns today, there are, as Dele pointed out, 60 million acres of lawns in the United States, and there are 6.2 million lawns in Canada. So looking at the cost of lawns, so we didn't talk about this too much, but they are significantly costly. So they are costly in water, costing over 9 billion gallons per year in the US, in fertilizer, taking up about 3 million tons a year in Canada. I'm going to switch between Canada and the US because we're in both of those regions. And also in pesticides as well. The pesticide that was originally used for lawn maintenance was contained the pesticide 2,4-D, which was actually used as a post-war tool to eliminate every species except for grass in an attempt to cut off the food production of another country. And that was used as a pesticide for lawns. And in lawnmower use, which took up about 800 million gallons of gas per year in Canada. And those three costs have a cyclical positive feedback loop with each other, unfortunately. So the more lawn is mowed, the less roots that they're able to develop, which means that the more fertilizer they will need, which means that the more water that they need. And that's the cycle that will continue with modern land management. And so it also has a cost of land. It costs about 56,000 hectares of lawns in Canada, and again, 60 million acres in the US. And in finances, it's $1 billion landscaping industry. A study of lawns in Ontario found that after 7 years, lawns ended up costing way more in effects than they did to upkeep. And then also in plastics, from plastic fake grass or turf, which has been used and leaches microplastics. And so a little more on the cost of water. Thought this was a very alarming statistic. Up to 70% of Calgary's residential water is used to water lawns. And it is estimated that between 30 and 60% of urban freshwater is used on lawns. And that actually makes them the most irrigated crop in the US, more than any food crop. And so now some of the outputs, the effects of all these costs on lawns. So looking at the effect that the symbol of the lawn has had. So these are non-native grasses that mostly populate the modern lawn, like Kentucky bluegrass, ryegrass, tall fescues, and even Canada bluegrass. And the prevalence of these species in our lawns cemented a look of sameness, control, and order. And again, since the early 1800s, it was a status symbol of wealth, status and being well kept. If you had a nice lawn, you were more favored to be more organized, more put together, having a nicer family and a nicer house and a nicer job. It was all part of that, that presentation. And it criminalized plants and casts out diversity as weeds, and also criminalized people as keepers of diversity, seeing them as going against the grain and against conformity, and actually penalized for it. Multiple people in both the US and Canada have been fined and jailed for not mowing their lawns or for having their lawns too wild. And again, it enforces the Western ideal of conformity, and the relationship with the land is that of property ownership and domination, a very settler colonial concept of lawn maintenance was imposed on the land as well as the people. And the same thing that happened to the lawns and to the native plants was also happened to Indigenous people, and contributed to the colonial idea of the nuclear family with the heteronormative couple with the 2 kids, the nice house and the nice lawn and the white picket fence. And effects on species and biodiversity. So as Dele was mentioning, these lawns have less food and less habitat for our native pollinators. And as that population declines, it makes them more difficult to pollinate food crops, as well as all of the flowers and other species of diversity. So more lawns means less diversity. And over one generation, it found that the UK had lost 97% of its wildflower meadows due to the imposition of lawns. And these also cause pollution, air pollution in the form of lawnmowers, which emitted 48 kilograms from only one single season. And they actually emitted also lawnmowers, some of them more hydrocarbons than that of a pickup truck or sedan. And these gas-powered mowers made up 5% of total air pollution in the US. So a pretty big contributor. And then water pollution, this is in the form of surface runoff from fertilizers and pesticides. And so they contributed 40 to 60% of those fertilizers ended up in surface and groundwater, which contaminates the nearby water tables and water bodies, making it more expensive to treat that water and destroying the habitats around them with toxicity. And so I'd like to point to what the government of Canada has under a page called Starting a Lawn. And so the first line that they open with is, if you're like most people, you probably want to have a healthy looking lawn. Besides being a great place to spend time, lawns do many things. They filter pollution, buffer temperatures, absorb water, and prevent soil from washing away. And so after all of the status, after all the research that I have presented, I would really urge you to challenge this assumption and challenge some of these benefits that lawns have been touted for. And you can really see how institutional and perpetuated the status quo of that lawn is. It's right there for the government. And that's the presentation. I hope you enjoyed and shared a little more, more evidence to be ammo for your unlawfulness.
Awesome, Lindsay. Thank you so much for that. Wow.
If anyone has any questions, let me know.
Lori?
First of all, thank you. That was amazing. Useful and informative. The one thing that came to my mind as you were talking that I didn't hear mentioned before was medicinals. There's so many medicinals in the wild plants, like plantain is all over my yard. And I remember a man saying, in a small space, we'd have enough medicine for a group of people. And the lawn decimates those weeds that are really beneficials, not weeds. My friend makes, she dries the dandelion root and pulverizes it and makes dandelion chai for the winter. Thank you.
That's lovely. Thank you, Lori.
And did you have a question?
There was a time when people took their lawns out and planted dandelions. Because dandelions, the greens are, good salad, they're blood cleanser. The roots are coffee substitute. And the flowers, besides making dandelion wine, it's a good less of it. It's a good for, cleaning the fat out of the cholesterol out of your body.
So Deli, did you want to actually maybe, were there any other questions for Lindsay?
I'll put some resources in the chat as well
Thank you.
for anyone wanting to learn more.
And we can also put you've got a resource list at the end of your presentation. So we can also put that into the community notes document. So after all of this, we will send a little follow-up email with the recording to everybody that registered and also a link back to the notes document. So Lori, was there something else?
Is there a way to know where people are to see if anyone's nearby? Is anyone else in New York?
That's what I was going to suggest. Thank you.
So our Unlawnful campaign, we're kicking it off now and starting this summer, exploring why this idea of unlawnfulness. And in the fall, we're planning another webinar about how. So how to actually go about transforming a lawn into a diverse ecosystem. And through the fall and the winter, we want to kind of continue to explore this question of how and have people share their experiences, share resources. One of our board members is going to be leading up a team of people who are going to create resources for the community. So basically, if you're wanting to have a work party to transform your lawn into a food forest, or if you just want to naturalize your lawn, what are the different things that you might do? What are the different species you might introduce? So we have a team of people that are going to be putting resources together. We also want to invite people throughout this process to be sharing how they've done it themselves before, share their own projects. And in the spring of next year, we would love to launch some hands-on, on the ground projects, work parties in different places where people are actually planting some of these gardens. And so these could be, you might start with an existing lawn, you might start with a little corner of a lawn, you might start with, maybe you have a veggie garden maybe you just do annual veggies and you have annual flowers and you want to diversify that. So you could be what you want to create might be very different. And so what we're wanting to do in this course of the next few months is, and we're also working through our process and how to bring people into this process. So we'll definitely be looking for and inviting volunteers to help us create resource materials, help us promote your projects, promote the community's projects, and then also culminating with next spring, actually planting in a whole bunch of different places, ideally. So that's kind of the idea. Does anybody have any questions about how you could get involved, or maybe ideas of how you might want to get involved yourselves?
Just wondering sort of what's the idea for the rest of the summer in terms of developing this stuff and the momentum?
I think we're still figuring it out. I think the first big step is this one board member is putting a group of volunteers together to start responding to people who are interested in the different roles. So some people, I think, one layer of participation would be people simply sharing their own stories on social media. And so providing information to people on how would you connect to the campaign and share what you're already doing. Other people might want to get more involved and actually help us create handouts. And so we're basically still in that organizational stage in this summer, basically. Does that answer your question, Anne?
Thanks.
Of course. Deli, did you want to add clarification about what we have in mind with this campaign? I mean, we have a lot of ideas, I think, and the reality is, I think we have more ideas than we have had people power to actually make all of it happen. And so we've been trying to simplify. And I think, like Deli was saying at the very beginning, one of our permaculture principles is to start slowly and simply. And so we decided that starting with the why would be a simple place to come together. And we're figuring out next steps as we go.
I kind of wanted to go back to the question of what people can do. What do we envision people doing now? Okay, so what we envision people doing now, I guess 3 different things. If you want to continue online promotion of this idea, online promotion of why should we do this, getting that information out there. And then this is the time to also post, if you're one of those people who's already restored your lawn, this is a time to showcase that. And then for those, if you're not in any of those 2 categories, I think this is the time to begin those small group gatherings, these little cluster groups. As I was trying to kind of get us to move in that direction, to identify people with like interests who are in your geographic area, and to create a cluster that will have conversations for the next 2 or 3 months about what do you want to do in your area and how can you help each other do that. So this is the time for clusters to form and to begin to talk to each other about how can we help each other, how can we create a project that can be launched in the spring? Because it might take that long. Does that make sense? Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's, do you want to have online conversations about, how what are you interested in? What would you like to see in your area? And what kind of support do you need to make that happen? Because we have a lot of resources. This is, a regional organization of permaculture professionals. And a lot of people would like to volunteer with a community-wide effort. There might be lots of models about how to do that. I know Colleen has, a very nice potted plant design. How can we, bring that into, because some people, that's what they have, is they have space for potted plants. And Lori, I think, has her hand up, so we might want to see, what do you want to ask, Lori?
I do know some people who have converted their lawns. I'm just wondering if there'll be a space on your website, 2 things. One, for people who weren't here tonight, where we could refer them so they know the details. It was an excellent presentation, and I think others would benefit from it. And 2, I'm wondering if you're willing to showcase people who've done it and maybe have a photo, because I think it gives people more hope or ideas to see what other people have done. And the other people I don't think are a member of this organization yet, but if you wanted me to reach out to them, I could, to see if you're going to do that, if they would be willing to.
That's exactly what we want, Lori. We exactly want to showcase people who have done it. This is the time in the campaign to do that. And the idea is to showcase them on our Facebook page, and because I don't know exactly what it's going to be on the website, but we know, Facebook is easy.
Oh, and so actually, maybe just to clarify on that piece, so Lori, I've just put a link in the chat box. So this link describes more the campaign. And I think it depends on how many people we have that are that are offering their stories and their photos for us to showcase. And so so we might not actually be the ones posting all of them on our Facebook page. We will also be inviting people to post it on their own social media and either tag us or add the hashtag, which is what Lindsay has
We
put
want
here.
everyone to use the hashtag unlawful.
Exactly. So yes. So does that make sense, Lori? That basically, I think like for now, I think just with us starting small, we will be showcasing some people and some stories. And I think as momentum builds, we're probably going to be asking people to be sharing their own photos and videos and stories on their own social media, and then connecting back to the campaign, which is kind of the material that our volunteer team is trying to develop, kind of instructions on how to get involved.
The toolkit is ready. Has it been posted yet?
Pardon me?
We do have a toolkit that will be on the website that will explain, the different ways to stay connected.
I don't believe it's on the website yet. I haven't heard anything about it. I think what she sent by email was just a first iteration of it. So I think the plan
being
is
reviewed on the
Yeah.
way, I think, from my understanding.
Thanks, Lindsay. So I'm noticing that it's 8:31, and I think while we're all still here, so I want to go back to Deli's suggestions about next steps and this piece about potentially creating kind of local clusters. So I think the easiest way of making that happen would be to share people's email addresses and their actual physical locations, like what the actual town you're in. And so if you would like to share your information with this group, could you please, so either put it into the chat and I will keep that information, or email me afterwards. So info@northeastpermaculture.org. So that's the best way to say, yes, I'm going to be signing up to create a local cluster. Otherwise, I will not share your contact information or your location with other people.
Benita, I just put a table in the shared doc for
amazing.
information if people have
Awesome.
offers or suggestions.
Love it. Love it. So please do that.
Do you have on your website like a wish list or how people can help you to make this?
We are still developing that. We had a preliminary wish list and we discovered when we met a couple of weeks ago that the wish list was not comprehensive. And so we're actually still updating that. So that is something that we can also be sending out to everyone as a follow-up as well. Yeah.
I would
you're ahead of us in your thinking. That's basically what's happening.
I think, and I guess there's also a thought that we're not trying to do all the work ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Mm-hmm. This is an invitation for everyone in this group to take a chunk of that. Mm-hmm. So if you have the time to volunteer, to, make some, to, respond to emails, if you have the time to help create some of this online communication, we're gathering volunteers to help make this happen. Because you remember, this is we have at least 5 or 6 states that are part of the PAN organization. And we don't have staff for 5 or 6 states. Mm-mm. So we have to allow time to build a volunteer base. And so that's what this time is for, is to build a volunteer base so that people are not sending information to Benita. Okay, that is not the right answer. Okay, I'm just like, that's even like not allowed. Okay, what we, no, I'm serious.
Okay.
Because
Yeah, yeah.
if
We just have
everything comes into, if
Yeah,
everything,
yeah,
this has
yeah.
to be totally decentralized.
Yeah.
And so that's why the toolkit is going to be,
Yeah.
so within the next 2 weeks, the toolkit will be on the website in some iteration. Yeah, it has to, because people have to take responsibility for
Mhm.
their geographic area
Mhm.
and say, I will join with X number of people and we will do a demonstration. And all that Pam will be doing is saying, we'll be saying, okay, look at them over here, look at these people over there, but you have to take the responsibility to form so that it actually happens.
You're absolutely right, Deli. Thank you. And it's so true, because so wouldn't it be incredible if we had 5 or 10 real on the ground projects that happen in every state and every province that is a part of PAN? It would just be beautiful. And we know that we don't have the people power within the board and within the staff to make that happen. And so we really thank you, Deli, for
It
just
has
really
to
highlighting that. It has to come from
It
the
has to
community.
be decentralized. We have an enormous amount of expertise
Mhm.
within the organization.
Mhm.
And so the idea is, even if all we did was to highlight people who have already converted lawns, I think that would be great. But I would like to see more lawns converted myself. I would like to see more land returned to its natural state. I have to say that I'm one of those people where the law enforcement people came to my yard. I was doing permaculture research, and they said, well, anything native has to be boxed in.
Sorry.
They said
That's just funny.
anything native has to be boxed in. You can't have native just running around loose in your yard.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, indeed.
So on colonization and the colonial idea of boxing people in, what happens in Canada? We have reserves.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
anyway, we need to unbox our minds. We need to unbox our lawns. We need to unbox our social expectations.
Mhm.
This is a part of that. And that's why we're feeling like, oh, well, what do I do now? I'm not in a box. You haven't told me what to do. Well, that's part of what we want to have happen. We want you to feel that discomfort of being free, okay?
Mm.
And begin to work with each other to be more free so that you can free each other's lawns, our minds, our society.
Mm.
What a
Thank you.
beautiful closing thought.
Mhm.
Oh my word. Just a final note, if anyone wanted to see the PowerPoint presentation, I put a link right at the bottom of that table there. If anyone wants to refer back to it. I do have to head out.
Okay. So just to wrap up, I want to invite everyone to just share one word for how you are in this very moment. So feel free to put it in the chat box or unmute your mic. I'd just love to hear all of these beautiful voices in the circle again. Inspired. Yeah. Thanks, Lainey. Thanks for being here. Grateful.
Open-hearted.
Open-hearted. Thank you.
Feeling ready.
Germinate.
Nourished.
Jittery to get stuff done.
Breathing deep, feeling full.
Thank you. Is there one other person? Oh, eager to move forward. Yes. Well, thank you so much, everyone. We definitely look forward to planting and sharing ideas and connecting more with all of you. So thank you for being here. Wishing you a beautiful, blessed evening. Happy July, happy summer, safe summer, nourishing, abundant summers. Be well, everyone. We'll see you
Thank
soon.
you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Oh.
Thank you.